by the sound of violence.
I could use with a little bit of a filter, like a very flimsy one. But after a while, and I think that's the case with you too, that is ultimately what makes people relate to you. So maybe you're not going to be for everyone, but the people who do relate and like you really do relate and like you. And I'll take that, any day. Maybe not over billions of dollars from Spotify. Like Spotify, if you want to give me billions of dollars, I will absolutely change all that I am as a person. But
although I will say it does seem like, in podcast space, MMA or not, having white supremacists on your platform seems to be successful when you look at some of the most successful shows. I'll just leave it at that. But
I don't think I've had one yet, but white supremacists listening to this, if you want, I'm very much kidding. You can all go fuck yourselves.
Yes, no, please don't. Yes.
please just go away. Nobody likes you, not even your moms. Please, that's my message to white supremacy. Very controversial take.
What up, everybody? Welcome back to yet another Sound of Violence podcast. We are an MMA podcast, talks about the MMA podcast you should catch, skip, and can't miss each week, as well as we try and check out a new show. We don't do skips anymore. Well, actually, there is kind of a fuckload of skips this week. I'm not going to list them. Normally, I'm here with my co-host, Chris Madaffer, but I am running solo. We have been off for fucking ever. It's been a crazy month between Chris's work schedule, my getting COVID and everything. And so it's been fucking wild. So it's going to be a weird episode. If anybody is kicking it in chat, feel free to drop in. And I'm sure we might see some of the old school homies in here. But yeah, it's going to be a weird catch-up episode. I have basically a month's worth of notes. I've tried to condense them as best as possible, and we'll see how this goes. So, like I said, Chris is off this week between his work schedule and everything. He wasn't able to make it happen. Plus, he just literally hasn't had time to listen to podcasts. And full disclosure, he's probably going to be off next week as well because he's going full Bjorn Rebney, taking a trip to Mexico. So props to that dude, and you'll still see him around. He'll be back on here hopefully the week after that. But yeah, just heads up ahead of time. Other heads up, I think we're changing format just a tiny bit. So a big reason why we've been taking time off is because the cards have been hot trash lately. I mean, there's been good fights, but a lot of the actual cards themselves have been fucking terrible, at least from any kind of name perspective. So what our plan, or what my plan is I think we're going to start dropping the second segment for picks. It's going to save me a ton of time in editing, and it'll make my girlfriend way less aggro about me doing 3-hour shows. We'll talk about good cards when they're coming up, but as a heads up, I think we're going to skip the second segment going forward, since we end up talking about a lot of the fights anyway, just by covering podcasts. That being said, we should get into format. So I am running solo. Also, I should right out the gate tell you guys, as I'm sure you can tell by how fucking sweaty I am, it's like 1,000 degrees in San Diego. I live like walking distance from the beach, and somehow it is still like absolute death weather down here in September. So that's got to be good. That's a good sign for where we're all at. Also, San Diego's on fire in North County, if I remember right. So, good times. But I'm going to start off by talking about this beer, which is a limited release that I found at the liquor store near me, which is Fistful of Gummies from Second Chance. I'm a big fan of Second Chance Brewery. I know I've gone to some events that girlfriend Karen has done for dog rescue stuff at some of the Second Chance locations, especially the North Park one. The North Park one did a bottled release of the Black is Beautiful beer, which is I'm a big fan of, so I highly recommend that as well. I think it's still around in bottles, but I'm excited to try this. I like fruited sours. This, I would imagine, I'm 100% here. I probably shouldn't just guess. It probably says it on here. Reminiscent of your favorite sour candy, slightly sour with bright raspberry and blueberry notes. I am almost positive this is either, I'm guessing this is kettle soured. And I'm guessing it's probably just loaded up on citric acid, because that's how a lot of these beers, and just all the like sour drinks go. They just dump citric acid in them. And I'm guessing this is just a kettle sour. Out the gate, not too much butyric, like not too much of that like pukey butyric acid on the nose. You're always gonna get like a little bit of a funk. Especially with it being a sour, and it being like a gummy sour, so it's inherently going to be sweet and have a little bit of like a artificial flavor to it anyway. Ooh. Yeah, so not pukey at all, which is good. If you guys know what I mean, butyric acid on kettle sours, sometimes it'll taste a little bit like I know this is not going to be an appealing statement, but it'll have a little bit of like a bile aftertaste if it's a weird, like sometimes you'll get that out of kettle sours. I'm not getting that at all in this. It's also not very aggressive in the flavors either. I guess I should say this is the Papa Vodka presents Doug which side is he on? Doug Stanhope presents our sponsors. There we go. Yeah, pretty good. All right, before I get into the podcast, some other shit I'll shout out. Because I am, since I'm doing this solo, you know I'd be smoking weed during this episode. And picked up from FloraCal some Legacy 2.0 on sale. It was like, I don't know, $30 for an eighth. And this fucking camera sucks for weed, but it is stupid fire. That thing is actually pretty purple, even though you can't see it. You can kind of see hints of it. Pretty washed out because of it's the middle of the day and 1,000 degrees in here, so everything's sweating, including my camera. And then I also picked up some of the goddamn best looking weed I've ever bought in my life. I think it was $27. It's called Local. This actually, so this is the ice cream cake from Local that won an Emerald Cup Award. And that I got that on sale for like, I think it was 27 something plus tax. And yeah, stupid fire. Again, you can't see it on this at all, but it's goddamn ridiculous looking. Lower THC percentage, but they hit like a motherfucker. Don't go by THC percentage. Pro tip for people outside of weed states. THC percentage doesn't really mean shit. I mean, it's if you're like at a strange shop and you want to go with the shit that probably isn't super like fucking sketch, you can go by that. But if you know the shop, go by what looks good or smells good if you can do that. Anyway, I guess we should get into format. I have here, how many pages of notes do I have that we're going to get into? I have a total of, where the fuck is the page count on this thing? Is there not a page? I thought there was a page count on Google. Oh, yeah, 11. I have 11 pages of notes just on podcasts since we've been off, and I didn't take notes on all of them. So it's going to be, we going to talk about some stuff, so I'm just going to go ahead and get into it. Yeah, I'm curious to see how this all goes. Also, if it gets too hot, I might end up turning a fan on. So I don't know if you guys can tell I'm already fucking glowing, if you will. I got that southern glow, even though I live a fucking mile from the beach in Southern California. It's brutal out here, y'all. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. Heavy Hands episodes. For catches this week, I should start off. Heavy Hands, episode 381, and the bonus episode from August 11th. That's right, August 11th. That's how far back some of these notes go. God, we've been off for a while. Dude, okay, so Tumen came on and absolutely destroyed the format of Heavy Hands, which longtime followers of this show know. I love people who come on and break format. And that will actually come up a couple times during this episode. But Tumen completely shattered the format of Heavy Hands, and it was a whole lot of fun. Kyle does the same thing when he goes on, and it's one of my favorite things. I don't know. It's just always cool to hear someone go on and change the format of a long existing show, because you get a very different episode, and it's memorable every single time, for good and bad things. If for nothing else, Connor Rebush's jokes were on point during this episode, and definitely cracked me up. Let's see. Tumen also made some solid comparisons, like Connor and Leon Edwards. They recap Lewis versus Gone. And how there's not really much to take away from that win, because it went how I think a lot of people thought it was going to go. I mean, you took a dude who feints a lot and you put him against Derek Lewis. What'd y'all think was going to happen? It's just going to be Derek Lewis flinching for 2 rounds before he gets deaded from panicking. I love me some Derek Lewis, but let's be real. They also, a lot of this episode went over Aldo's insane win, and just how sensational he looked over Munoz. Just a really fun episode, and I'm going to try and keep a lot of these brief since I have so much to cover, but absolutely recommend it. With that being said, if you want a more balanced version of Tumen on Heavy Hands, the bonus episode, as Connor Rebush pointed out at the top, Tumen, it feels like, finally caught up with his hangover and mellowed a little bit for the bonus episode, which was more fun and less fun in some ways. I don't know. You guys know I'm a big Tumen fan, and especially with Phil McKenzie and Connor Rebush, especially whenever Connor gets excuses to clown on people, and Tumen is one to make jokes back. That's always, it's my favorite shit. Which is why I can't wait for Matt G to be on that show. Oh, by the way, number 1 signer of the petition to get Matt G on Heavy Hands. I'll go ahead and put myself as number 1 on that list. I think Tumen might be like number 1.5, to be honest. Anyway, on the bonus episode, they talked a bit about Chiesa dodging himself. Talk about Torres versus Hill 2. They talk about I believe it was Tumen. I think it was Tumen who called Faber the Walt Disney of MMA, in that, like, he just slaps his name on everything and he hates dissent, which is, I really appreciated. I thought it was very much on the nose and very much on point. Let's see. They also talk a bit about Menifeld versus Herman and Bobby Green versus Fiziev. I always fuck that up. Really good episodes, and anytime we can get more Tumen on anything, I'm on board for that. Next up, also, these are in no particular order. I just have a ton of catches and can't misses and just stuff to listen to, so I try to group them by what show it was, because again, we've been off for fucking ever. Best Camp of My Life, episode 42, 43, and 44 were all super good. Episode 42, Zane Simon guested, and it's just a lot of fun discussions, everything from UFC 265 and why it was Lewis versus Gone. They talk about hard training and sparring, commentary biases, like how to do tape study the right way, especially in modern day MMA, especially with the UFC. And then they also talk about Rogan not doing any tape study anymore, and just kind of how to keep a balance with MMA, which I've been struggling to do. As you guys could probably tell by the time off, sometimes you need to just take a break, and that is exactly what Chris and I both kind of did. It's been nice, but I'm not going to lie, I've still been listening to a fuckload of MMA shows, so I don't know if that counts as a break. Speaking of great MMA shows, though, Best Camp of My Life, episode 43, Aaron Juice Jackson guested on it, and good God, if you guys know anything about me, you know I loved this episode. It was, as they self-described, way too personal. There's also some great weed brownie stories. There is talk about bully beatdown, talk about problematic motherfuckers. Juice even gets a Gegard impression out there, which I feel like people have been sleeping on Juice's Gegard impression for a while. I feel like Juice and Dan Tom both have it down real well, but I feel like I think even Dan Tom gave Juice the nod recently on that one. Yeah, it's just a really, really fun episode and a great example of why I love both those, both Fernanda and Juice and their personalities in the sport, because they are very much their own people and they are very much an absolute blast to listen to. So, highly recommend it. Let's see, Best Game of My Life, episode 44. Pizzi guested. And this is a really good episode with Pizzi. Even though Fernanda outed herself for liking Bud Light, which, I mean, listen, I live in San Diego. I grew up on craft beer. I mean, the first craft beers I had was a fucking Ballast Point Sculpin IPA at like 15 that my girlfriend's mom bought for me. And it was fucking aggro as shit, and I've loved him since. There's nothing wrong with a Bud Light here and there, bro. Like, I will fuck up a light. I have some Keystones in the fridge behind me. How about that? How about this? I think Busch is one of the most underrated beers of all time. Regular Busch. It's a great fucking beer. Hams? I fuck with hams so hard. So people need to get off their high horse with some of the light beer stuff. That being said, I maybe don't love Bud Light that much, but it's the perfect beer pong or shotgun beer. I will say that. If you're gonna shotgun a beer, Bud Light is like my top 3. It might be my number 1, actually. I think it's either like Bud Light or Busch or Keystone are probably my 3. And Keystone's a little foamy if you're gonna be shotgunning them. So you know, it's manageable. Let's see. Also, PT discusses how there's light beer everywhere in Vegas, which that is, there's light beer, Captain Morgan, and Jack Daniels everywhere in Vegas. Anything outside of that is where you start getting into like, so your only heavy beer on tap is Arrogant Bastard. That's your move, huh? Let's see. They talk a bit about fighters like Cannoneer saying they're broke and awful fan responses to fighter pay. They talk about the new season of Tough. And then they get into a lot of stuff about MMA fighting and both MMA fighting and kind of all the change-ups in the industry that have happened recently with Fernando leaving The Athletic and PC leaving MMA fighting and just kind of all the chaos around the media recently. They also talk a bit about the PT's new podcast that he's doing with Chuck and Ariel at the Ringer MMA podcast, which I have not listened to yet. It is on my list of new shows to check out next week. I don't know what that show is going to look like. It feels like if they tried to spin off a combination of the MMA beat and what was Chuck and Jose Young's show? Not Jose Young. Chuck and Sean Al-Shadi's show at The Athletic. It feels like they're trying to combine those two and move it to the Ringer. It'll be interesting. I'm curious to see what that thing turns out to be. So I do miss hearing PT and Chuck on podcasts. So I'm curious to see what that sounds like. Ariel, I still don't know what to make of Ariel. I like that he's speaking out more, but also dude has a long list of motivations that I don't necessarily always feel comfortable with. That being said, on to a much more fun show. Well, not more fun, but onto a much more fun discussion than the one about Ariel. Inside the Hexagon, episode 60. This is a classic throwback episode. This is with Miguel. Oh, fuck. That seems like a bad copy paste or spell correction. So let me confirm this real quick. Sorry about the very, very fucking loud typing. Oh boy. Googling this live is a lot of fun. Okay, well, Inside the Hexagon, episode 60 with Miguel. I apologize for fucking up Miguel's last name. I have written down Inuit, but that looks and sounds wrong. So apologies that I'm probably butchering that. But he is the dude who got into MMA through meeting Jeff Osborne. He actually was the person who match made the first women's card in Hook and Shoot. That everybody, I mean, if you know Julie Kedzie and you were around back in the day, you remember that shit. Those were legendary tournaments. Both of them. Was there 3? I know there was 2. And then he talks about getting involved with Bodog, and now he does a podcast with Chris Lights Out Lytle about MMA history, which I am very hyped about. That is also on my list of new shows to check out next week, because I did not have a chance to get around to it yet. But it's very cool. Essentially, Chris Lytle is sitting down with a lot of fighters and going through like different parts of their career, like pre-UFC, pre-Strikeforce, that kind of thing. I believe they had Joe Riggs on recently, and they just did another one. Can't remember if Joe Riggs was today, and there was another one a couple days ago, or the other way around. But yeah, really interesting, and I'm hyped to check that thing out. But it was cool hearing him talk about that. He also talked about matchmaking, the first Play One Mansion show, and trying to put on the crazy, ostentatious Bodog cards in like Costa Rica and shit, which is like the actual fight. What they promised Fight Island was the UFC, that was what it was with Bodog when they were in Costa Rica. If you go back and watch those things where they're literally on a fucking sand beach. I think Jorge Masvidal was on that card, if I remember right. Hey, Mark Fellows, the Daylight episode indeed, sir. Hope you're drinking something good. I've got this weird fruited sour from Second Chance. It is a fistful of gummies, and it's good for a gimmick beer. I bet you know what I mean by that. It's not like it all fucking... What are those terrible energy drinks? The ghost energy drinks that taste just like you're fucking eating a warhead? It's not like that. It's not just like pure citric acid. But yeah, Inside the Hexagon, episode 60. Highly recommend it. Also, Mark Fellows, let us know in chat what you're drinking, because I'm sure you either recently cracked or are about to crack something. Because Mark is a legit beer expert, as I believe we cited in our episode 200, if I remember right. MMA Depressed Us, episode 59, was also absolutely a blast. There is some Skype issues, so full warning on that. But they edited around it in a way that is absolutely not a problem. I kind of enjoy it even more. Let's see. There's some great David Carradine jokes out the gate, which is always a... Oh, Jesus. Mark Fellows says it's 6:13 a.m. there, which means he is a goddamn trooper. It also means, I'm guessing there's a breakfast stout or a breakfast porter in the future. He's probably... Actually, Mark is a legit adult. He's going to drink some water and some coffee first, probably. Let's see. So the MMA Depressed theme for episode 59 was action fighters at their worst, aka action in action. Inaction being one word, like not active, like inaction. That really only reads if you see it. Let's see. So the first one is Carlos Condit versus Magni, which, oh boy, that fight's a whole experience. It's actually more competitive and interesting than you doremember. I remembered it just being Magni holding Carlos Condit against the fence on the ground the whole time. It really isn't. Carlos is working the whole time, and he still does some Condit things, but yeah, not exactly an exact blast of a time. And then the next fight is Cerrone versus Jury, which is a very weird one. Oh, that's right. They also talked about in that episode that Condit's tattoo artist, when he tried to sue the UFC and EA for using the tattoo, which they then pointed out, like, why is it always the dudes who have the most generic tribal shit that try and sue people for stuff? Because who was it? I think they even talked about Mike Tyson's tattoo artist trying to sue for the second Hangover movie when they did the copy one, or was it third? I don't remember. They're all a blur. Huh. Let's see. Phil drops 2 Matilda references during this episode, which I really fucked with. Matilda's a banger, and I won't hear otherwise. There's also some... This episode... Dude, why is there not a film show with Zane Simon yet? I've been trying to convince that dude to do a film podcast for so long. And yeah, there's just a great discussion about RoboCop for like a good portion of the Miles Jury fight. And it's so good. It's a great discussion about RoboCop. So it's just real good. there's also some hot Frank Miller takes. Like, I'm telling you guys, if you want some sweet film and other talk that's not necessarily about fights, highly recommend it. And then let's see. Yeah, it's just I have a bunch of notes about films. It's a goofy episode, but I really enjoyed it. And man, anytime we can hear more Zane Simon film talk, sign me the fuck up. So, highly recommend it. My skip this week is anyone who started talking about a Paul brother that wasn't just saying, what a fucking farce, why did anyone talk about this? That's a skip this week. And so anytime anyone started actually analyzing any of that, I just stopped listening to the episode. Because it's not worth my time. It wasn't worth their time. And I believe we'll get to it in a bit, but I think it was Sean Sheehan pointed out that the only reason to talk about the Tyron Woodley versus Jake Paul fight, or Joseph Paul, Gerald Paul, what's his name? The only reason to talk about that fight is because it gets views. There's no other reason. It doesn't do anything. No one, I would argue, no one really if you do want to talk about it, and it's not for views, I would argue you don't follow either sport. It just kind of sucks. It's just kind of lazy and meh. So that is my big skip for this week. Is there was a lot of it, and yeah, everybody feel good about themselves for talking about that for like a week and a half, and then talking about it for another week afterwards. And that was what it was. What it always was going to be. Y'all feel good? Didn't make me feel good having to listen to any of it. So, take that for what it's worth. On to more important shit. And just honestly some great fucking content that people put out this week. Or I should say this month. Last month, I should say at this point. Verbal Tap, episode 470, was absolutely can't miss material. I urge everybody to go back and listen to it, because no one's having this discussion this clearly out loud in public, or at least very few people. And it's big of people in not only people with a big platform like Verbal Tap, but like people that deep in the jiu-jitsu community. That's a hard thing to do, and I commend them wildly for it. So they had a very Clements on. I apologize for butchering your name. I'm the worst. And she had a discussion about sexual assault awareness in the jiu-jitsu community after she wrote the stories about the Marcel Goncalves accusations. I hope I wrote that down right. I'm now questioning myself, but I'm pretty sure I'm correct on that. As well as other reported assaults or alleged assaults within the community. And it's frustrating that so much of that community, even after shit comes out, is like, hey, but Jesus. And that's kind of everybody's response to it. It's frustrating to watch, and so it's really refreshing to see someone not only have a very open and honest discussion about that community and some of the problems within it, but to do it out loud on mics and to put it out there, I feel like is a big thing, and I like to see more of it. And I absolutely commend the dudes at Verbal Tap, as well as especially Avery Clements, who I'm sure I'm butchering her name so fucking bad, and I'm so sorry about that. It's not intentional. But yeah, it's an unfortunate story, and the more they talk about like comparing the frequency of those problems in martial arts in general and in BJJ compared to like other sports, it's clearly there is a divide there. And the discussions they had, I don't want to try and repeat it offhand because it's not going to do it justice, but you really owe it to yourself and to as a mixed martial arts fan who hears a lot of stories about gyms, you really owe it to yourself to hear the other side of some of those stories. And I absolutely commend them for this episode, and I think it's absolutely worth checking out. So, Verbal Tap, episode 470. Definitely recommend it. Here, let's get to a kind of fun one before we get to another serious one. Trent Rhinesmith has a new YouTube channel called Man Fuck Joe Rogan, and it's my favorite. It's real good. He is essentially going through and doing the knowledge fight or tuckered out version of Rogan, where he is just taking specific things Rogan puts out and then fact checking it. Since Rogan provides zero fucking source. Rogan is just doing Alex Jones. He's just doing the Alex Jones thing. He has been for, I don't know, when did he start selling pills? Oh, no, you know what? When did Aubrey Marcus get involved on the show? That's the day. That was the day. Because I know they've always been friends and shit, but the day Aubrey started showing up on the show and trying to sell roll-on and roll-off before they were changed to Alpha Brain and all that shit, Aubrey, from Austin, Texas, is an Alex Jones fan, saw Alex Jones start selling supplements a year or two before Rogan did, and then Rogan magically has a supplement line that Aubrey Marcus is pushing, and all of a sudden starts pushing white supremacy narratives and also moves to Texas. I'm just saying, maybe there's some coincidences there. But yeah, a much more concrete breakdown of why Joe Rogan is saying dumb shit is Trent Rhinesmith's new channel, and I can't recommend it highly enough. He did actually have a thing where he was complaining about sources, and I dropped a comment being like, love you, definitely would love to see you post sources though if you're gonna say Rogan doesn't use sources. And he was like, great call. That was just an oversight. So I'm glad to see him doing that going forward, and I think that channel is going to be incredibly useful, especially considering the fucking things that have occurred over the last 2 weeks with Joe Rogan, where a week before Joe Rogan confirms he has COVID, I don't know if you guys noticed, we tweeted out a video of Rogan saying that everyone around him has COVID, but he never tested positive with his shitty home test, so not positive, bro. Also, I don't know if you guys have taken those home tests or just like rapid tests. They're all over the place for what I found. So I don't know, man. It's a interesting time and an interesting space to be in it. Anyway, moving on. Southpaw, episode 104. This is an absolutely incredible episode. Rafael Garcia guests. Rafael, god damn it. I know Rafael. We had Rafael Garcia do a clip for episode 200. God damn it. I read a name that starts with an R in the MMA community, and I have a panic attack every time. Rafael Garcia guested, and he talked to Sam about getting into MMA, and it's kind of a big discussion about MMA, pro wrestling, and the jiu-jitsu community. And I loved it. I thought it was very interesting. As someone who does, all of my pro wrestling knowledge comes from MMA podcasts or the Laps Fan podcast, in your ass, as they would say. TLF is that fucking cast, as they would say. I'm not gonna just keep making TLF jokes. Fucking. It's just going to get very inappropriate. I'm not the biggest. I was never into pro wrestling as a kid. I always thought it was corny and fucking goofy. But it's interesting to hear them talk, not only kind of comparisons between the two, but also just kind of the similarities between the fan bases and how that crossover is maybe part of the problem. They also talk about MMA culture versus BJJ culture, which is more just worse overall. They also address some of the sexual assault cases and grooming issues in BJJ and martial arts in general. And like what they referred to as the black belt wall of silence, which is kind of similar to the blue wall of silence that a lot of the BJJ community leaders seem to take. Yeah, it's just a really interesting discussion. They also, aside from that, talk about a bunch of stuff like Gon's win over Lewis, CM Punk going to AEW, DC and Rogan's terrible commentary. Just a really, really good episode, and they cover a lot of stuff. And again, having hard and interesting discussions as dudes who are actively in communities that are toxic, which, the community itself I wouldn't say is toxic, but there are very toxic elements of the community. And by not addressing that, no one does anybody any favors. Like, again, as is the motto of this show, we cannot all grow unless we all listen to each other. So, I don't know. I just really enjoyed it, and I love the work that Sam is doing over at the Southpaw Podcast. And Rafael Garcia is great on everything. Like, MMA Ratings Podcast is one of my go-tos on the reg, so absolutely recommend it. Another can't miss of mine this week. You guys, I'm sure if you saw this come out, you knew it was the next couple. When you saw them come out, you probably knew this was going to be a can't miss for me. Best Camp in My Life, episode 45. Dan Tom was on, and they didn't really talk about MMA, and I kind of fucking loved it. I mean, they talked about MMA culture, but yeah, you're not going to hear any fight breakdown stuff on this episode, and I absolutely loved it. They talked about also I didn't realize Dan Tom was the first repeat guest outside of Boo Boo. Shout out to Rodrigo. Almost did an H at the beginning of that, but I caught myself right before I did it. Rodrigo Campo is obviously like the regular on that show. He's the regular guest co-host if there's going to be one. But Dan Tom, the first comeback guest spot, and man, could not pick a better dude to do it. You guys know we got mad love for Dan Tom over at this show, and I think he's been absolutely killing it the last year. And a lot of the discussion around this is Dan Tom, again, completely breaks the format of the show. I think Fernanda had like a whole bunch of notes she wanted to go through, and they didn't touch on any of it, which, man, it honestly almost always makes for my favorite content, even if it goes off the walls and is like all over the place. And Kyle is screaming or singing the intro to Heavy Hands before Connor can play the intro, or Dan Tom is talking about 14 topics before Fernanda can get to one, or Tumen is interrupting everything and also just fucking making my favorite jokes. It's always my favorite shit. Anderson Cowan on anything he's ever gone on. I just enjoy it. So, yeah. Hey, people doing guest spots, don't be afraid to break format of the show within reason. Like, don't be a dick. But, like, you guys can get away with a lot more if you wanted to, but a lot of you guys are just playing it easy, and it never makes for the most memorable episodes. So don't be afraid to just go way off tangent. Although, really, I'm not the person to listen to about sticking to a fucking format or topic, as anyone who has listened to this probably knows. Let's see. So they also talk about relating to fighters who are kind of fucked up, and like because of just being like growing up in fucked up environments and stuff like that. They talk about all the xenophobia around the Rose and Wei Lee stuff, and just kind of all the terrible reactions from the BJJ and MMA community over the last year to events that have occurred in fucking modern day society, and how that has kind of changed a lot of the landscape for a lot of people, it feels like. Also, as you guys heard on the intro, Fernanda and Dan Tom had pretty much my favorite set of jokes this week with the white supremacy podcast jokes. I mean, come on. What else was it going to pick for an intro clip? So I absolutely loved it. And yeah, it's just honestly, it's an interesting discussion between two people I really enjoy listening to on their own, and even more so when they're hanging out talking shit. So yeah. Only thing I can recommend, next time more booze. But really, I could say that about any show. So, cheers. And Mark Fellows in chat saying, "Oh yeah, TSOV never goes off script." with a crying, laughing face. Yeah, no, we're always on topic. Chris and I never talk about fucking video games for 30 minutes of this MMA show. It never happens. Speaking of which, dude, why did I hear so much Psychonauts 2 talk this week? Holy shit, everybody loves that game. I might have to actually go play it. It's on my list. I have it because Xbox Game Pass, whatever the fuck it's called. But yeah, goddamn, Jack Slack gushing over Psychonauts 2, along with somebody else brought it up too. But yeah, I think I'm gonna have to get some Psychonauts going this week. Let's see. So my other 3 can't misses for this week. The Severe MMA, the news headlines for August 27th, 2021. This is the one I referenced earlier, where Sean Sheehan, this is the show where he goes and looks at headlines. And of course, since this was the week of August 27th, all of the top three headlines for MMA fighting were all about, anybody got a J name? Jose Paul. And I don't like that one as much. Jakob Paul. This is where Sean points out that, like, there's no reason to cover it if it's not for clicks. There's just no reason to cover it from, like, a sporting or MMA standpoint. Or boxing standpoint. There's really zero reason to cover that shit. And so it's disappointing that it is the top three headlines on one of the biggest MMA sites on a week with multiple MMA cards. Like, man, these are the kind of reasons why people get mad at MMA media. It's because, and I know it's the people it's the people who own the companies that make these rules. It's the same reason why a bunch of motherfuckers signed NDAs for the UFC as journalists. It's because the higher ups were like, just do it. It'll make us money. But, you know. Anyway, Severe MMA, the news headlines. That show is a gem. And, yeah, you should really go listen to Sean's points about why that is just a terrible, terrible take and a terrible look for the sport. Because I absolutely agree with him. Let's see. The CME Power Hour for September 3rd, 2021. I'm going to just say these two things, and I think you guys are already going to know why it's can't miss for me. They go back and look at two of the most exciting or most, like, two of the wildest wins. Not wildest. Two of the, like, most dominant. Nah, not even most dominant. Just two of the most memorable, I think is the way to say it, wins of Robbie Lawler and Nick Diaz's career. So they go back and look at Robbie's win over Josh Koscheck after coming out of Strikeforce and looking pretty mediocre, and then just absolutely obliterating Josh Koscheck. Then they also watch Nick Diaz versus Takanori Gomi at Pride 33. I mean, that's a can't miss episode if you're doing commentaries for fucking old school Robbie Lawler versus Josh Koscheck and you're doing a commentary of Diaz Gomi. Come on, bro. That's a can't miss right there. Also, they're great commentaries, and they still on that episode also do $20 you never want to see again, where they're betting on stuff, and then they do the Power Hour power rankings, which include a dildo weigh-in, Rogan getting COVID, and Chad being fucking hyped for Vitor versus Holyfield. So, really good episode, and I highly recommend it. Let's see, MMA on the Rocks, episode 253. It's my last catch for this, or can't miss for this week. And Dan Tom guested it. If you're ever going to put two of my favorite drinking MMA podcast personalities on a show, it's Dan Tom and Bill Welker, and it's them talking about whiskey for a while, even if Dan's not even drinking. Dan was drinking coffee this episode, and it was still such a banger. Bill also has some excellent advice for how to not get hungover from whiskey. I believe his pro tips were, if you really are going to go heavy on bourbon, or on whiskey, you should go bourbon because it's the highest regulated, so you have the least amount of added sugars and stuff, which absolutely checks out and is a super smart move. But also, bourbon in its own, by nature, has a lot of extra sugars, so really, if you're going to be a real drunk, you can go vodka, and then just fucking go full Doug Stanhope on it. Yeah. Oh shit. Mark Fellow is also saying in chat that the episode for this week with MMA on the Rocks, Bill Welker actually played guitar. So that is I didn't even know Bill Welker played guitar. That's dope as fuck. So I might have to go check that one out because I saw it. They just posted that I think about today or yesterday. I think they do Sunday episodes. I also just saw that Connor Rebush is on the newest episode of Steffi's show, Crooklyn's Corner. So I'm excited to give that a listen as well. That's going to be a lot of fun. And there's a new Show Money this week, which I'm hyped about. All the stuff I couldn't get to in time before this, obviously, because, I mean, you guys have seen how many. I think we're only, 3 pages into my 11 pages of notes? Something like that. Oh, no, we're 5 pages into my 11 pages of notes, so we're getting there. Let's see. on MMA on the Rocks, so they talk about hangover tips, like I mentioned. Bill also mentions he's starting a new booze channel, which I'm incredibly hyped for. I think that's going to be super fun, because I think that dude would have a great fucking booze channel. And yeah, also Florida has very different access to, especially whiskeys, than we do over here. Because like I feel like half the stuff that's really hard for Bill to find is everywhere here, and half the stuff that's really easy for him to find. Like I can't find a fucking Heaven Hill, like just the regular green label Heaven Hill bottles anywhere out here, but I can find Buffalo Trace fucking everywhere, and I feel like his is the exact opposite. So it's cool to see what all is accessible in his area. They also talk a lot about, obviously, the cards that happened. This was right after the Giga card and right before the Brunson Till card. And yeah, just a lot of fun. They talk about all the visa cancellations on the Brunson Till card. They also recap Giga's performance, and like, as you guys were well aware, yeah, Mark Fellows in chat, booze channel. That was exactly my take as well. You guys who are familiar will know that like Dan Tom is not the biggest Giga Chikadze fan for, I would say, good reason, but I get it. I'm not necessarily either. I find his style kind of frustrating, but then again, I find a lot of people's style frustrating. Shouts to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, which nobody likes to hear. Anyway. But yeah, I really like the breakdowns they did and the recap of the card. They talk about, let's see, Tercios having Tony Ferguson and Miguel Torres vibes in the cage, which I totally get. Not just the hair. They also talk about Kevin Lee and how him saying D-Rod looks small weigh-ins was kind of a tell. Which I didn't catch that, but that's a great point from Dan Tom. They also talk about the Cult of Ardbeg. Anybody who's a big Isla Scotch fan will be well aware of how everyone who doesn't drink or everyone who drinks Ardbeg just comments on every other Isla Scotch, being like, "Have you tried Ardbeg? Because Ardbeg is fire." Which Ardbeg is fire, but like so is Lefroy and a bunch of other stuff that tastes like I don't know, what do they describe it as? Making out with a walrus or kissing a Band-Aid by the sea, that kind of thing. It sounds terrible, but god damn it, do I love me some Isla Scotches. Let's see. They also talk a bit about the Joe Silva matchmaking era and how he was able to build cards so much more effectively for pacing rather than the modern era. So, yeah, really good episodes, and I absolutely recommend all of them. Let's see. Where are we at? So I got some new shows. I guess we can get into those. Like I mentioned, next week my plan is to check out the new version of the MMA Hour, which I've only seen clips of, but I don't want to just pull. I didn't want to just start off on the episode where he dunks on, where he declares himself the CEO, CFO, and COO of PF Chang's. I don't want to. It's too on the nose, and I don't want that to be the first episode we cover. And so I will be covering that show next week probably. I'll also be taking a look at the Ringer MMA show and Lights Out, Chris Lytle's MMA history podcast. LYTES, Lights Out, for y'all who weren't around, or for all y'all youngins who aren't old as shit like I am, or getting to be old as shit. Let's see. So the first show I listened to this week was the MMA Fighting's Ranking Show, their debut episode. This is going to be released once a month, it sounds like, at the beginning of the month. And it's going to be essentially covering the MMA Fighting Rankings panel and some of the discussions around them. It's hosted by Sean Al-Shadi and Alex K. Lee. The way they formatted it so far is they have 5 speed rounds where they just kind of go over like recent changes and moves that fighters have made in the last month. So they talk about stuff like voting tallies. They talked about Gon's rise. They talked about some of the cuts that happened. And they also said that they have an 18-month cutoff. So if you don't fight within 18 months, you're pulled off the rankings. And it's not that you haven't signed a fight. It's that you haven't fought in 18 months. Interesting. I liked it quite a bit. And then at the end, they're going to start having like a discussion around a controversial decision or a controversial ranking, and have some of the other panel members on. So for this episode, they had Jed Meshew and Damon Martin on. And they came on to talk about why Aljo and Jan are tied in the rankings and who should be ahead of the other one. It's an interesting discussion. They have like a point system, so it actually turned out that because of some of the weird decisions that some people made, like trying to make fucking Aljamain Sterling or Peter Yan third in the rankings at 135 somehow, that they have it turned out that Aljo and Yan were tied. And so they have a discussion about who they think should be higher. And then also they talk about how a rogue panelist has GDR, Jermaine Durandamy, over Amanda at 135. Because technically Amanda has not fought at 135 in 18 months. Which is like, it's interesting that, it'll be interesting. That show is really good for transparency. And it'll be interesting to see how long that show continues to exist because of transparency. Because I think they're going to get blowback, and I think they're going to realize that it might be more problematic than it is to not talk about it publicly, and then it's going to turn into the UFC rankings. It's just the vibe I have, because these discussions, just off the bat, they're going to cause some more discussions. So I'll put it that way, based on what I heard. So, and it also sheds some light on some of the rankings process that I feel like is... It's interesting. We'll put it that way. So, worth checking out, though, for sure. Let's see. So, the other new show I listened to this week was Tanisha's show. Tanisha Singleton. Her show, I Have Questions, episode 14. First off, out the gate, I have to say, I rarely get, like, regional ads on podcasts. I'll get them sometimes, but a lot of times I feel like it was kind of all over the place. I feel like a lot of the ads I get are very generic. However, on Tanisha's show, I not only got a Padres ad, I got an SDG&E ad. So I don't know if I've just been... maybe Chris has texted me about Padres too much. Maybe that's how it happened. Or maybe I've yelled about SDG&E being a trash company too much online, and that's how it happened. But pretty good targeted ads, if I was going to guess. That being said, Kyle Green guested on this episode. And she opens talking about her adorable dog. And then they get into different stuff. Or actually, she gets into some stuff that I found really interesting. Tanisha talks a bit about like controlling the shit you can. And then for everything else, you figure shit out only when shit needs figuring. So you're not just constantly stressing about shit that doesn't need to be solved right this second. Which I thought was like a really interesting way to go about it. Mark Fellows asking in chat, what's it called? It's Tanisha Singleton is her name, and the show is I Have Questions, episode 14. Tanisha's great. If you've listened to any of the writing and fighting panels, Tanisha is one of the PhDs on there that is always a fucking great personality to have involved. And also she's just hilarious. Like Tanisha's great on Twitter too, and just a lot of fun. I'm a big fan of Tanisha's, and I guess that kind of ties into the next note I had, which is that she talks a lot about just leaving a positive impression in general, and she has always done that with me, and that's something that I, as a grumpy old man, as a grumpy old fucking angry dude whose dad is from New Jersey, I get a little yelly and I get a little grumpy, and so I could definitely use more effort into leaving a positive impression instead of a grumpy ass old man impression, and I find it interesting. And then as for the MMA side of things, her and Kyle talk a lot about why people kind of refuse sometimes to think critically about MMA, and like some of the reasons that could be the cause for that. A lot of times it makes them feel uncomfortable, or it makes them have to look inward, which MMA fans do not like to do. Let's see. Some other stuff they talk about, like what are deal breakers that make you stop watching certain sports? Because they were talking about football and concussions and that kind of thing. Just like interesting discussions around sports in general. I should also say Kyle's a professor as well, I believe, and is a PhD. And yeah, so just a lot of talk about kind of not just sports, but how they tie into education and how all that kind of crosses over to everything in life, really. And you can a lot of learning is learning one thing and then applying it to different areas of life. And it's just a lot of discussions around that, which I absolutely loved. They also talk about everything from the paper they wrote about the UFC's brand identity during COVID and all the praise that Dana gave himself for saving sports. They also talk about about the media hit piece and why that promo got pulled after the fact, which is very unlike Dana and the UFC. And then they also talk a bit about how narratives help turn casual fans into diehard fans. And just really interesting discussions that I absolutely love. So highly, highly recommend it. Everything Tanisha does is fantastic from my point of view. And this is no different. So I have questions. Episode 14. Definitely recommend it. It's a lot of fun. All right. What else do I got? I have a whole bunch of other honorable mentions, and I'm honestly just going to rattle through these with the quickness because there's too fucking many to go into all the notes. So I'm going to run through these and let me, Mark Fellows or anybody in chat, let me know if you have questions. But again, link in the description for anything we talk about on thesoundofviolence.com. So if you ever want a link to a show or referencing, you can check it out there. Holy fuck, it's hot in here. Okay, here we go. Protect Your Neck, episode 276 was really solid. Poor Dan bought a bunch of Ruka stuff right before that article hit about the Ruka dude being involved with the MyPillow guy and stealing election fucking ballots and shit. It's the worst. Oh, fuck. I feel for you, Dan. Protect Your Neck, episode 277 was also really solid. He gave a shout out to a bunch of good podcasts that he recommends people give a listen to. And also Sly Stallone at one point drops by to give picks during that episode. It's a lot of fun. Let's see. Verbal Tap, episode 469 with Hunter Colvin was really solid. Talks about Hunter ending up on Team USA for the Polaris card, like 24 hours notice after they did their last episode together. Also, Verbal Tap, episode 471 was really good also. They talk a little bit about the blowback they got for their episode covering problems in the BJJ community. If the Shoes Fit, episode 197 about Halle Berry getting cut. Kat Zingano getting cut by Halle Berry, getting cut by the UFC because Halle Berry told her to turn down fights. And then all the speculation around the fact that, like, she got cut by the UFC, so WME was no longer interested in having Kat Zingano involved in the film. Really shady. Really, really shady. I definitely recommend giving that a listen. CME live chat for September 1st, 2021 was a lot of fun. Ben's unemployed and kind of loving it. They also hint at their upcoming Kraken Up podcast about the Seattle Kraken hockey team. I think it's Seattle, right? And then I know it's in Northwest somewhere. And then they also talk about just some other questions from the chat. Laura Senko doing commentary, sexual assault allegations against Jake Paul, that kind of stuff. Tengradome, episode 18 was really solid. Nate Quarry guested, and they talked a lot about the Ali Act and unionization versus like a collective bargaining movement and that kind of thing. Tigradome episode 19 was really good as well with Hacks Operator and Dan Albert. They talk about not only the twinkification of tech, but they also have discussion about communicating analysis, which I thought was really interesting. Severe MMA episode 325 was super good. Let's see. They talk about fighters starting to wake up to bad fighter pay. They talk a lot about Kayla Harrison and the PFL playoffs and the Invicta pay-per-view, and they recap some of that Cannoneer versus Gaslam card. Severe MMA Premium, Hear Your Crazy Ideas was a lot of fun. Sean Sheehan is asking... sorry, I got distracted for a second. Sean Sheehan has asked everybody for their weirdest MMA opinions or worst takes or crazy ideas. And so there's everything from just some of the ones I wrote down is every time there's a Japan event, bring back the ring. Fighters should use the cup offensively to strike. That was someone's take. Oblique kicks should be banned was someone's take. That was going into before the Till Brunson card. Which, by the way, The quickest way to tell me or anyone on Twitter you're a casual is to say oblique kick should be banned. That shit is... That's a take. I'll put it that way. Also, Mark Fellows asking in chat, how's my health? Back to 100%? Yeah, I'm basically back to normal. I still got a little bit of a cough, but when have I not ever had a little bit of a cough? And then as far as like everything else, my smell and taste is pretty much back to normal. It's probably not like 100%, but it's probably like 95 at this point. Let me put it this way. I can smell weed again, so I'm pretty happy about that. Because that was the worst part. Is I bought some weed during COVID. I had someone get it for me, and then I couldn't tell if it was good or not because I couldn't smell it at all. It's like it looks okay, but I don't know. It might be trash. Turns out it was not that great. After I got my smell back, smelled it again. Not that great. It was fine though. Let's see. The Chasing Pack from Russia with Love, September 2nd, 2021. This is the show that Shawnee Sheehan does on Severe MMA about organizations outside the UFC. They talked a lot about PFL and some of the Cage Warriors trilogy stuff that's coming up, as well as the Russian and Dagestani takeover of MMA. Yeah, really solid episode. I always enjoy those. Fight Site, episode 61 was really good. A lot of talk about... Tuman guessing on that one as well. And a lot of talk about Aldo's wildly impressive performance. Heavy Hands, episode 382 was really good. Connor Rebush even slapped out some Herbie Hancock on the intro, so you know I'm here for it. Episode 384 of Heavy Hands was also super good. I talked about Darren Till's super low volume and previewed that fight against Brunson and had some really solid takes. They also talk about Phil's disdain for Giga Chikadze, which I'm starting to really agree with and enjoy all the unimpressed Giga takes, because I feel like they're not only on point, but they are a lot of fun to listen to. Mark Fellows with a very good point in chat that punches and kicks and grappling should probably also be banned. I agree. Really, every fight should look like Derek Lewis versus Francis Ngannou. Right? That's what we all want. Then again, if there's ever two dudes less likely to throw an oblique kick that will end someone's career, I feel like those are the two. Let's see. TSN MMA show, episode 243 was real good with Aaron and Joe. They previewed the Giga versus Barboza card. And I really liked hearing Joe Valtolini's takes on Giga versus Barboza. I thought that was really interesting getting to hear all his takes on that, and yeah, definitely recommend it. Jack Slack, episode 50. He talks about upping his production, but he also kind of trashed it with the generic soundboard. Luckily, I haven't heard him go back to it yet, but pro tip to all podcast producers, don't play a canned fucking wah-wah sound effect. It's been done since the goddamn 80s on radio, and it's never been funny. If you want to clip yourself saying something dumb, or someone else saying something dumb, or something out of context, or a unique clip, that's one thing. If you just want to play a fucking applaud sound effect, or a wah-wah, or a fucking fail horn sound effect, go fuck yourself. That's my take. It's the worst. It ruins so many podcasts. Y'all want to learn how to do drops correctly? Go listen to Anderson Cowan when he used to produce Loveline back in the day, where he ran the episode as Adam Carolla as a robot. That shit is next level. Whatever y'all are doing now is weak. This shit is weak. Anyway. Oh, God. The Anderson Cowan soundboard of Carolla, back when Carolla wasn't just the most trash person, was so good. Oh, God. That is legendary. I might have to go pull some of those. Let's see. Oh, yeah. So, Mark Fellows, Chris is off because Chris has a crazy work schedule. And then also Chris is going to be off next week because he's going full Bjorn Rebney, heading to Mexico. So yeah, he's gonna be off next week as well, but he is bringing back tequila. So win, lose, win. I feel like we're breaking even. But yes, I am getting him back on this goddamn show eventually. It's just between schedules and COVID and everything, it's been a heck of a process. Let's see. Friendly Sparring, episode 25 was really good. Leo and Juice ate edibles and are super high, and just a lot of fun. Level Change, episode 139 was a really solid episode. Talking about Rogan getting COVID and Laura's Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series debut. And then also Vic Rodriguez was absent for that one as well. So I'm excited to hear him back on that show next week. So love me some Vic Rodriguez. And then lastly, Care Don't Care for UFC Vegas 35 reactions. Was a lot of fun. I just really like it. Eugene's audio was absolute trash. I think he was just on his phone or something. It's not good. But not... It was consistent enough that you tune it out over time kind of thing. So... definitely recommend giving all those a listen and subscribing to everybody. Like I said, there's a link in the description for all that stuff that I talked about. Let's see. Before we get out of here, since we're no longer doing a second segment about recapping stuff, I guess I can mention Till vs. Brunson. I mean, Till still can't deal with Panic Wrestling. So, that's how that went. Molly McCann still pressures forward and accidentally head collides into people and throws mad volume against people who don't do well with that over time. I don't know. I feel like a lot of that card went the way we all thought that card was going to go. Khalil Roundtree blew out some dude's knee. Also, all you geniuses who are like, we should ban this, go back and watch that, because Khalil Roundtree tried to do it the first time. The dude evaded it. And then the second time, Khalil Roundtree timed it right, and the dude did not evade it. That seems like a legit fucking take for me. I feel like that's just pretty straightforward. Cabo San Lucas, Mark Fellows says, is where he discovers his love for tequila. Oh, Don Julio Reposado. Yeah, Don Julio is I feel like a lot of people's go-to intro tequila. I think mine was probably Casadores, maybe? But that was because I fucking fell in love with, goddamn, what's the grapefruit tequila drink that I always fucking pound way too many of and get hammered? What the fuck is that called? Paloma. I fell in love with Palomas in high school because one of my buddies loved making Palomas. And yeah, once you start getting into tequila and once you start getting into the good tequilas, well, first off, I feel like you just immediately transition to mezcal nowadays. But second off, yeah, tequila is great, but dude, the high end of tequila is way too expensive for what it is. I will say that right now. I feel like super high end tequilas are not better than most 40. You know what? Now that I say that, that's almost every booze though. I feel like anytime you get above $50, 90% of the time, it's not that much better. There's some exceptions, like mezcal probably is one of those, or no, some Isla whiskeys or some, but really anything above $50, you're paying for brand recognition most of the time, or just rarity, which is cool. There's some dope rare shit, but also a fucking $40 bottle of goddamn Michter's American is just as good as a lot of the $100 bottles of bourbon, or whiskey in general. So let's see some honorable mentions that I have that are well-rounded stuff. Shouts out to the CME boys. Actually, number one is crew members. The Cisco Mode and the CMZ crew. Cisco Mode, as I've talked about in the past, does a bunch of YouTube videos and stuff. He's a young kid down here in San Diego who him and his buddies go to abandoned places and film some skating and shit like that. And yeah, just a really nice dude. So I've been trying to support him, and yeah, he's putting out some dope shirts and shit. It's hard to see probably from the fucking, because of this sweaty ass camera and the humidity in here. But yeah, he put out some dope content. His videos are fucking incredible. We'll have one linked in the description. But yeah, go support young dude who's putting out some dope shit. Behind the Bastards, Libertarian Theme Park of Your Dreams. So you guys, I'm sure, have heard of Action Park. It's been everywhere. I think I first heard about it on the Comedy Button in '09 maybe. Somewhere around there. But there's been, I mean, documentaries since then. HBO did documentaries. A lot of people have done YouTube videos. I think Defunctland had one. I want to say Bright Sun Films might have done one at one point. I know for a fact that there was the Johnny Knoxville movie, Action Point, which is based on it. But Behind the Bastards did an episode, and they named it The Libertarian Theme Park of Your Dreams. It's a Garrison episode where Garrison Davis comes on and reads the script to Robert Evans. And, man, it's just the best. If you guys have not heard about Action Park in New Jersey, it's the most insane, like, teenage booze and drug-filled theme park that ever existed. And just everybody, actually not that many people died, but everyone got injured all the time. The city or the state made them hire their own, or I think it was the city, made them hire their own ambulance fleet. It's a crazy story. And it's just some like crazy libertarian dude who's just like, fuck it, I don't care what anybody does. It's just the most insane shit. So I highly recommend that. I did shout out the local ice cream cake, which is super fire. And then I also shouted out the Floracal, the Legacy 2.0, which is also fire. That's some Sea Junkie genetics. Super, super good. What other stuff do I got? How to drink. Which hard seltzer isn't garbage is a fantastic episode. Spoiler alert, most hard seltzers are fucking garbage. Half of them taste like bad fruit juice. The other half of them taste like corn / oxidized paper. But there are a couple that are good. And actually, Greg on How to Drink did find a couple that I want to try and then confirmed that I was correct about some other ones. So I definitely recommend checking that out. Also, don't drink most of the ones you know the name of because most of them are trash. Let's see. I've been playing some GTA Online. I shouldn't be. I'm a grown-ass man playing GTA 5 online, but it's basically just a Hot Wheels sim for me at this point. And that's not even true. It's literally a Fast and the Furious sim, because I got the fucking orange Paul Walker Supra with the fucking stupid green logo on the side, like it's goddamn Fast 1, except it's a 2020 Supra. It's very dumb. It's a dumb game. I spend too much time doing dumb things in, but that's pretty cool. I mentioned Psychonauts 2, which goddamn everybody is talking about, including Jack Slack, calling it Game of the Year, if I remember right. So I'm going to have to play some Psychonauts too. And then I also have on my list Hades and the Ascent, which John Jones recommended. The real John Jones, not the fuckboy. Not the, you know which one I'm talking about. The game designer, John Jones, recommended. And I've been hearing a lot of good shit from him about it from Giant Bomb and stuff. And yeah, they're on my list. I just haven't gotten around to them yet. Also played some Riders Republic, but I'm super meh on that game. It feels so arcadey. So like if you want an arcadey version of Steep, it's kind of like that. I don't know. I don't think it's for me. But it's kind of interesting. So I think that's most of the stuff I had to cover. Yeah, this is going to be I'm surprised we got out of here this quickly. That blows my goddamn mind. When I just am able to ramble by myself, I guess I ramble way less. Who would have thought? Well, I guess we're going to wrap this here then, because I am already dying of a fucking heat stroke, and it is very warm. But I will be back next week solo to do another recap episode. I'm really excited to see what people put out this week, because this card, the fucking Anthony Smith versus Spawn card, is like... it's so bad. The card this weekend is so bad. Here, you know what? Let me pull up Tabology. We'll look at exactly how bad this motherfucker is right now before we get out of here. Because it's one of the worst cards that's happened in a while. So Anthony Smith taking on Ryan Spann, which we talked about. That is some fucking light heavy. Oh my god, there's a boy. When your main event is Anthony Smith versus Ryan Spann, and your co-main event is Yanku Dalaba versus Devin Clark, bruh, we need to talk. Oh my god. Jim Miller versus Nicholas Mota. Joaquin Buckley versus Antonio Arroyo. Jagos versus Saryukin. Mandy Baum versus Ariane Lipsky. Like, what the fuck are we doing, bro? Jesus Christ. Hey, why the fuck is that at the bottom of the card? Paniki and Zad versus Raquel Pennington is a dope fight. That should be way higher up. This must not be finalized yet, because that's insane. Emily Whitmire versus Hannah Goldie. I know there's some creeps out there. They're going to be super hyped for that fight. Alatang versus Lopez. Impic Sanganai is back. Mike Rodriguez. All right. There's some fights. Montel Jackson, JP Buys. Oh, God. Okay. Tony Gravely's back. Man. Mark Fellows with the definitive reaction of all of MMA Twitter. Oh, well, I'll watch it. Yeah, that sounds about right. Mark Fellows also says in chat that it's so bad that Bill Welker said on his podcast this week there was no card because he forgot. Yeah. No, that checks out. I mean, that... To be fair, Conor Rebush and them on Heavy Hands, I believe, also forgot that there was a card. And then they're like, oh, this is the pay-per-view. Oh, no, we have Smith versus Spann first. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Mark Fellows saying in chat, when you can't drink craft beer, you can drink a Bud once in a while. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, there's nothing wrong with absolute trash once in a while. It's just that the UFC tries to give it to us every week now. So, this card, I am kind of hyped about Raquel Pennington, Panikin, and Zad. I think that's going to be pretty fucking scrappy. But the rest of this card is... I don't know how I feel about it. But we will be back, and that's kind of why I'm curious to cover the episode next week, is I'm curious to see what motherfuckers do with their podcast. I have a feeling a lot of people are going to take a week off with the pay-per-view coming next week, and the ones who don't, I have a feeling are just going to be talking about goddamn oblique kicks the entire time. So we will be back and report on it. But until then, I'm Neo, I'm Leo, I'm DZ. I'm just kidding. We're not Knowledge Fight. You should go listen to Knowledge Fight, though. That should also have been one of my... my well-rounded shows. Fucking Knowledge Fight's the best. Red alert, red alert, red alert. Alright, well, on that note, I think I'm actually going to go listen to the new Knowledge Fight. So, we are out of here, or I am out of here. I will be back next week, and then, fingers crossed, I'm going to get Chris back on the week after that. In the meantime, please send us your MMA podcast you recommend we listen to. TSOV Pod on Twitter, sovpod@gmail.com. Website's The Sound of Violence, where we have all our notes. Cheers to Mark Fellows for kicking it in chat. Also, shouts to Mark Fellows for shouting out something I should say we're off on this show, which is stay hydrated. Do I have my fuck off? I don't have my fuck off. I bought one of those stupid, like, fucking gallon-sized water bottles. They're like, it's dumb, but it's great. Best purchase I've made in a while. So on that note, everybody, go let us know what MMA podcast you're listening to. Or if you're not listening to MMA podcast this week, let us know what you are doing. And let us know what you're drinking on. We'll be back. Till then, go do something decadent and fuck Nazis. We out. But oh God, I don't have my outro song.
Liked by the sound of violence.